All right, welcome into this week at Gridiron Icon. I am joined by my better half and partner in crime, the iconic Mr. Preston Denard. How are we, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well in honor of my friend, his first team he played for. But we really want to focus on the Rams, but I just had to pull it out.
As
Greg,
we do.
What did you call this, Greg?
As we do.
Buffalo. Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Listen, the Bills Mafia is coming.
We had great days in Buffalo. You know, let's you know what? Buffalo's had its great shares of days and great games. But you know, let's be honest, PD. We were 2-14 a couple years when we were there. We suffered through some heartbreaking days.
Boy, he started that thing out, didn't he?
That's what happens. Listen. Legends wear horns. Legends wear horns.
We suffered through some hard games back then,
we
man.
did.
Some cold weather.
All right.
There's only one thing, but I'm gonna let Stacy get started. But there's one thing that I'm gonna mention that was wonderful in that 2-14 seasons. We'll get to it.
Okay. All right. So for folks that are listening or watching on our YouTube channel, Gridiron Icon, you may recognize this voice. And as you can see with the banter between two ex-teammates, this is going to be a riot. Our guest this week is a former running back from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, drafted in round 1 of the 1984 NFL draft by the Buffalo Bills, where he was a Pro Bowler in his rookie season after rushing for over 1,100 yards as a rook. He went on to the much more important and glorious Los Angeles Rams, where he truly shined, leading the league with 16 touchdowns in 1988, winning NFL Comeback Player of the Year, and followed that up by, let's do it again, 15 rushing touchdowns the next year in 1989, one of the only players not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame to ever do that. He briefly joined the LA Raiders in 1990, and folks, I'm going to get this out of the way. In my opinion, one of the most underrated players of his generation in the 80s and 90s, the iconic number 42. That's the number. Greg Bell, running back.
There you go, baby. There you go.
There we go. Okay, we got a little sound effect there. Hey, guys, it's great to be here. Great to be here.
Glad to have you, baby. Glad to have you. This is going to be fun, and I look forward to it because I got so many things we want to ask. So let's just get to it. And Stacy, kick us off. I'm gonna let you because you're on tonight. You know.
Yeah. I'll kick this off, and then we'll jump into the stories because I got a feeling you two are going to be on fire here tonight. So take us back to the beginning, Greg, for those fans that have lost track of you or want to catch up on a little history of what you've been doing. But take us back to the beginning. Columbus, Ohio. You started as a kid. Just tell us real briefly how you fell in love with football. Was there other sports and what role your parents played?
Well, you know what? It's kind of funny because most people in Columbus, Ohio didn't even know I played football because I really didn't start playing until I got to high school. And back in those days, it wasn't 9 through 12. It was 10 through 12. So I was an outstanding track guy. I was an outstanding basketball player. I pretty much did those two things all the way as a young kid. But I'm going to tell you, we had a game called Smear the, I won't say what the other side of the name was, but I was one of the best kids. I could go back and forth and nobody could tackle me. But my mother never would sign the release forms for me to play football. So I never got a chance to play. And then when she finally gave me the release forms, when I think I was in the 8th or 9th grade, they put me on the line because I was bigger than most kids. And I hated being on the line, so I never came to practice. So they would watch me with a basketball walking to the gym to play basketball when I was supposed to be practicing football. And so it was like an outstanding joke that I would show up for the banquet to get my football trophy because I paid for it, right? And they would make jokes about, well, he could have did this, he could have did that. But it shocked everybody when finally in the 10th grade I decided to take football seriously, and they let me play running back for the first time. And believe it or not, that's the only position I've ever played in my life. I started out as a running back, and I've never played any other position other than running back my entire life. And colleges that recruited me, I'm a kid who grew up under Woody Hayes, and I grew up coming behind Archie Griffin. Archie's like a big brother to a lot of guys who grew up in Columbus, Ohio. And so me and Keith, his younger brother, we came up at the same time. We ran track together. We knew each other. I was really an outstanding long jumper, and I kind of did a lot of great things on the track and field side, more so than ever did on the football, actually even during high school. And I was a track guy who became a football player, but because of my size, it's just, by my junior year in high school, I became about 195, and that's a pretty big high school running back. And, the speed was always there. And like I said, that's the only position I've ever played in my life. A lot of guys have always asked me, a lot of colleges recruited me to be a defensive back because I had a 43-inch vertical coming out of high school.
Wow.
And I just said, this is the only position I've ever known. If I'm not going to play running back, then I'm not going to go to your college. And, I was fortunate to be, back in those days, they were called blue chip All-Americans. Me and Herschel and Kerwin Bell and Mike Rozier were the top 4 backs coming out of high school that year. And the 4 of us, we kind of made a pact that we weren't going to go to the same schools. We wasted time us sharing positions. Herschel went to Georgia. Kerwin went to Kansas. I ended up going to Notre Dame, and then Mike ended up going to Coffeyville first, and then he ended up at Nebraska. But, the funny thing about it, we all became friends, and we all know each other. And it's funny when we see each other today. We remember each other from being, going through some recruiting trips together. But that's how it was. But, Coach Hayes was a big influence on my life. I met him when I was a young kid up at Ohio State. And it's kind of funny. I run a camp today that's a simulation of what Ohio State had when I was a kid. It's a free program about sports, but it was a life skill camp. And so it was called NYSP, National Youth Sports Program. And it taught kids about life. And Coach Hayes, I told people, I think he used to use it as an early recruiting trick, because he could come out and see a bunch of kids, a lot of young inner city kids that didn't have anywhere else to go to, to have a facility like Ohio State. And I do the same thing now. I take them up to Cal State San Bernardino, and, I've seen about 18 kids that I work with over the last 20, 30 years now that have got a chance to play in the National Football League. So it's one of those opportunities where, you give a kid a chance to dream, and you give him the resources, and you can watch him grow. And I'm just happy that I had that opportunity, and I've been able to take what I've had and keep that cycle, that the circle of life, I guess you can call it, and be able to give back the same way that someone was able to give back to me back in the 70s. Man, Petey, can you believe I actually said that, 1970?
Yeah, you did. Just imagine.
That seemed like a long time ago, man.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Well, what? No, go ahead, finish.
Petey, I was 23 years old when we first met.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You were just coming in, and I was just about on my way out the door. But I want you to take us back when you first had your first opportunity to be on the football team. Everything's a go. You go out to that first practice, the first time you put your hands on the ball in the backfield. Tell us about that experience, the first carry. You remember that?
Well, it's hard to remember, but I do remember, it's kind of funny because at that time as a kid growing up in Columbus, Ohio, the Griffin name was really a big name in Columbus. There were about 7 boys, so you can think how many kids, and they all play football. And now we're down to the baby, which was Keith. And Keith was an outstanding football player at that time. So he had already been playing football, and it's funny because he was playing at what was called the unlimited weight. So you can weigh anything and play at that level. And I had never really ever played, and I can't tell you at the first carry, but I can tell you that first season I ended up leading the league in rushing, and I actually was voted MVP over Keith, who had been back-to-back MVP. And it was like it was one of those kind of things where you say to yourself, did I just do that? Everybody's like, man, he never played the game before, and he's MVP of the league. But like I said, we played that game smear the, you know what, and I was really good at that game. I'm just telling you. I was good at vertical, making people miss, and I was just really good at that game. And like I said, I told my dad as soon as I had the opportunity to play varsity football. I was fortunate that I played varsity from the first day I came to school.
Wow.
I never had to worry about reserve. I always had the number one line blocking for me, one of those kind of situations. And, man, PD, I wish I had a number one line when I was
Oh, no.
Don't tell it. Don't tell it.
Those Rams lines.
Because I was running for my life, man.
Oh, you were running.
My guys were good, man. They did their best.
Wait a minute. So you're running for, I mean, we're going to get into the pro career, but we got to mark that. You're running for your life behind the Buffalo offensive line as a rookie, and you still ran for 1,100 yards?
Still ran for 11.
Oh,
Yeah.
man,
is that fear or what?
It's kind of funny. I tell people kind of funny. That rookie year in Buffalo, it took a blessing, and it took a team effort. I think probably the first 6 games, I probably only had about 70 yards.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Literally, in 7 games, I had about 70 yards, and then the 9 other games, boom, there was 1,000 something. But it took one of my favorite players was Tony Dorsett. We spent a lot of time in the summer. Ron Springs, who was like one of my big brothers, he went to Ohio State. We used to joke back and forth, and Ron was one of those guys where, he just was a jolly guy. And bless his heart, he's no longer with us today, but his spirit is. Mm-hmm. And when I was in high school, Ron was a senior in college. And we have a thing called the Jesse Owens Open Meet, right?
Right.
And I ran as an open runner against the college guys, and I beat the college guys running in track in 100 meters. So it was one of those things where me and Ron had the same agent. TD would always spend summers with us, and we do Jack Lambert's football camp. And so I used to work as a kid. When you get a chance to meet Jack Lambert and Jack Ham and Corson, all the guys from Pittsburgh, I was like a kid in the candy store because, I didn't know my agent was recruiting me at that time. But, heck, they were paying me as a high school senior, and I worked there as a freshman and sophomore. And so TD finally met me, and we were just talking. TD and I would jaw each other a lot. And I told TD I beat him in the 40.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And he looked at me like, "What did you just say?" And I said, well, I said, as a track guy, I'm always confident of my speed. And I can remember Ron looking at TD and shaking his head like this. And he looks at Ron and says, "What are you shaking your head about?" He's like, TD. He's like, TD, he did run a 4.32 at the combine. So, yeah, you should probably not run it. And TD got so mad. I'm not lying. He got so mad that we used to joke back and forth. And so that was before my rookie season.
Right.
That was when I was a senior at Notre Dame. So after that play and after the game, TD walked over to me and says, "GB," he says, "I guess you are faster than I thought." PD, you can tell him what happened in the game because on the first play of the game, me and PD raced 80 yards, PD?
80 yards, baby. The first play of the game against the Cowboys. Oh my gosh! And he broke through that line of scrimmage. It seemed like he had like 2,000 yards that game against the Cowboys. But for a 2-14 team, and let me tell you, he lit up the stadium. It was almost similar to that kickoff return this year that the Bills had. Greg had that big 80-yard run, and I'm trying to catch him. I'm a 4'6" guy, and I'm struggling trying to catch him, but I'm right behind him, into the end zone.
We raced down. And we never looked back. It took something like that. We really had a struggling team. We had a lot of good guys. We had a lot of older guys who probably, I mean, I'm not saying PD was at the end, but some of our line guys, Will was probably towards the end.
Right.
Ken was coming towards the end. Joe Devlin was probably coming towards the end as well.
Yeah.
We had a really senior line, and it ended up changing in the next year and a half, 2 years. They actually, pretty much all of them were gone within the next 2 to 3 years. So it was just an interesting stable, and you got to remember two things about it. They had the 5th pick of the draft, and then they traded back to 14, and then traded back to 26. So they were picking early in the draft. So that told you they were bad the year before.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we went 2 and 4, and we had the first pick, and we picked Bruce Smith, right? And then then we had the second. Then we were the first pick the next year as well. And that's how that team was actually built, because of the picks that they were getting. They had traded. They lost Jim Kelly the year before because Kelly decided to go to the USFL, and when he came back, it made a hell of a difference. And he brought a couple really quality USFL guys with him. Ken Hall came, Metzelar came. I mean, they brought some really good talent from the USFL. But we also got, guys like Andre Reed in the 4th round. So it was people don't give Norm Pollum, Pitts, guys like that.
They don't give those guys the credit that they do. They
give Bill Polian a lot of credit, but a lot of picks were with a lot of those picks were with Norm Pollum. I'm sorry to get some calls
Norm.
To come through.
It's
I guess
okay.
I better block those calls, right?
Nope, you
No,
sound
you're
good.
good.
You sound good. No worries.
Rolling,
No worries.
baby.
But yeah, a lot of those guys were they did a great job, and then Bill Polian did a great job afterwards as well. And I see Andre. Andre's out here in California now, where I live, and we see each other probably once a month and joke about something. It's great to see the guys come out this way, and periodically I'll be back in Buffalo later this summer for the reunion, and I get back there generally once a year.
I'll be there with
but it's
you.
great it's great to see some of the guys and spend some time joking, bringing back the old times. With all the time. All the teams. When you get back to LA PD, you got your era guys out here are just crazy guys. So many of these great crazy guys out here.
Oh, yeah. You're living with them
we
now.
missed so many. Yeah.
Well, you know what? My only year in Buffalo was '84. Of course, you were drafted. And I tell you what, the next year, Andre, I had to give this jersey up. So he took '83 and took it to another level. And he and I are dear friends as well. And that fraternity is really cool. But one thing I want to say, what's so special about that 1 year in Buffalo, I ended up having my best individual year in Buffalo on a team that seemed to struggle a little bit, but we had some great highlights and different guys. And of course, Greg led that. But I got a big question. We're going to back up a little bit. How in the heck did Woody let you get away, or Ohio State let you get away and go to Notre Dame? Tell us that story.
Well, I'm going to be honest. It didn't have anything to do with Ohio State whatsoever. Coach Hayes got fired the year I was coming out of college.
Okay.
And
right.
Coach Hayes meant the world to me. When I can't call him Woody. That we don't call him Woody. He's Coach Hayes to us. Mm-hmm. He was an imposing figure, but he meant so much to the inner city. He gave so many kids of color opportunities that we never had. And so, we get broken up when we talk about it because the way he went out wasn't the way a guy of that nature should. He meant the world to us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, real quick, do you remember number 99 for Ohio State, big tight end? His name was Jimmy Moore. And you remember when Woody slammed that linebacker from Clemson on the sideline? Do you remember that day? I know, Stacy, you remember.
Well, I remember when he grabbed him, punched him, and
that's what I'm talking about. So the guy that pulled Woody off of that linebacker from Clemson was Big Jimmy Moore. He was my high school. He was my high school teammate in Tempe, Arizona, and he's no longer alive, my dear friend. But one of the great things about that is he ended up out of our high school. I was in the first graduating class. The following year, Jimmy graduates. He leaves. Frank Cush was ticked off because he couldn't keep him. He goes to Ohio State and just has a wonderful, wonderful career. So he's a good friend of mine. But there's something you and I have in common. You went to a school called South High School.
Yep.
I first went to a school called South Mountain High School in South Phoenix. Now, we were called the Rebels back then, but you guys are the Bulldogs. But you never knew that, and I didn't realize that until I started checking out some stuff with you, bro. What a great storyline in getting away. And going to Notre Dame, that had to just be an experience in itself.
It's a great experience. I was probably I know it was the first kid from the inner city to get a scholarship to Notre Dame from Columbus, for sure. Most of the kids that come out of Columbus to go to Notre Dame are typically from the Catholic schools. So, I was hoping that, it opened the door. And for kids coming out of Ohio, a lot of times they were all coming from private schools or parochial schools. But, for me, I wanted to make it one of those kind of first. But, the year we came in, and I say we because one of my dear friends who I lost many years ago, Stacy Turan. Stacy was an all-star for safety for the Los Angeles Raiders. But Stacy came from Broad Ripple that same year, which is a major public school in Indianapolis. And he was a basketball player. We knew each other from the hoops. And we both said the same thing. We wanted to make sure Notre Dame saw that, the everyday kid could be an outstanding student at Notre Dame. And both of us graduated in 3 years. A lot of times people don't tend to think, what happened. I graduated from Notre Dame in 3 years, and I did that because I did that because Archie told me there was one thing that I had to get from that school that they owed me. That's the one thing he told me. They owe you a degree. So make sure you get that. Yeah. And so every summer I was there I took full 15-hour credit hours during the summer. And so I graduated after my junior year, and I started law school at Notre Dame my senior year. And, of course, by the time I finished, I went to the Melrose games, ran in the Melrose, and then went to my first combine. And after that weekend, I figured out I didn't really need the law degree anymore. I had a really good combine weekend. I took second in the Melrose to Stanley Floyd at like 6:24. So I was like, I guess I don't need the law degree now. I'm going to get drafted in the first round. And that was the first, believe it or not, that was the first time anyone had even said to me, you got a chance to be a first-round draft pick.
Wow.
That's how funny the draft is. Remember, a lot of people don't know, my senior year at Notre Dame, I didn't really play because my junior year, I did a 360 and tore my ankle up.
Oh, wow.
So I had reconstructive surgery. And so I came back my senior year, and the ankle wasn't really healed. So Buffalo was taking a chance. So I guess that's why they decided to try and fight me on a contract, thinking I didn't deserve all I wanted. But it was one of those situations where, that was the first time. And I'm thank God. Like I said, I always thank God because he's the one that gave me the blessing. He truly did.
That's incredible. I actually remember watching you in college. And I remember when you got hurt, you had, at that point, weren't they going with a dual backfill of you and Alan Pinkett? Like you guys?
No, actually, no. When I got hurt, it was just me because my sophomore year I was first team All-American sophomore, third team All-American as a sophomore, and then I came back my junior year, and I got off to a bang. I mean, I was off to a great start, and then that third game of the year, Purdue tore the ankle up, and it was over. And I mean, I did a 360 PD, and the foot stayed in the ground.
I know that.
And so everybody in the stadium saw it and knew I was done. And the doctors told me I probably would never play again.
Wow.
So, like I tell people, faith means a lot to me, and the belief that the man above has a calling for you and he's got a plan for you. And that was the plan. And unfortunately, I thought the plan was just to be a football player, but I found out as the plan meant, he really wanted me to be a mentor, and that's pretty much what I've done my entire life now. I would love to tell you my life has been blessed being a football player, but it's really been blessed being able to help a lot of young men and women, go on and see the things that they really want to do in life.
Can't wait to dig into that. I got a few questions on that piece. That's amazing. So looking back at your Notre Dame career, it's wild, and I know that you guys have a lot of mutual friends for obvious reasons, but you seem to be a guy that plays with great tight ends in college. You've got Tony Hunter, Mark Bavaro.
Right.
I mean, this seems to follow you, but as we jump from Notre Dame and into the pros in the interest of time, so you're drafted to Buffalo, first round, you have success right out of the bat. The biggest thing is you met my co-host. That changed your life for so many reasons. But there's then you want out of Buffalo. Is that fair enough to say?
No, what happened is I tore an abdomen. And it was a lower abdomen. I tore a lower abdomen. And people don't want to be honest about things. But, you know, me and the doctors had we just had a difference of opinion.
Right.
He gave me something that really tore up my stomach. I ended up having a bleeding ulcer. He said he didn't give it to me, but of course, I'm taking medication that the team gives me. I'm not taking something that I just go off arbitrarily and get.
Yeah.
Me and Dr. Weiss didn't feel that way. And if you go and look at the guys that Dr. Weiss ruined their careers, like Jerry Butler and Mike Hamby, guys that I can go through a list of them, staph infections every time he went to have a knee surgery. I can go through a whole list. I mean, I'm not very happy with what happened, but since it's over now, I can laugh about it. But we had a difference of opinion. And it just happened to be a difference of opinion right as we were going on strike. And that didn't make it even nicer. And I was a pro-union guy. My mother worked in the union, and it supported her and supported my family for years to come. I stood on the picket line very strongly, and I supported the strike because I felt, as I feel today, players deserve guaranteed contracts. Yeah, players deserve to be paid, 55%, not 48% of the profit margin. And there's nothing wrong with guys becoming billionaires, but you don't have to be a slave for them to do that. And I think a lot of times we question why players, like right now, everybody's questioning why Lamar is doing what he's doing. We don't question why Jerry Jones cashes his check.
Yeah.
True.
He gets $1 billion. Nobody talks about the fact that these owners are cashing somewhere close to $3 billion each.
It's incredible.
And they haven't carried a football in their life. And everybody goes, they're the ones who invested. They didn't invest anything more than I've invested.
Maybe less.
I've invested my life. Tell me that, and you can tell me their life was invested. I don't know if they've invested as much as I've put into it. And these guys have gone out and they're it's been proven. These guys they're putting their lives on the line, and they're really the only ones that are truly being blessed by it are the 32 owners. And not that these guys are not being blessed. I just want to see if an NBA player can get a guaranteed contract, my NFL players deserve contracts. And that's what we were striking for. Unfortunately, we didn't have the backbone to stay and see it through. And then, today, people complain that, they get guaranteed money. That's not what they were fighting for. They were always fighting for guaranteed contracts. And just because they get guaranteed money doesn't make it any better. It sounds better on the face of it, but it really is no better, because they were already giving us guaranteed signing bonuses. That's the same thing as guaranteed money.
Right.
We were fighting to get guaranteed contracts, and I would love to say one of these days that these NFL players will have guaranteed contracts.
Damn.
Yeah, that is so true, because in '82 when we went on strike, we were fighting for the old guys. There were guys
exactly.
Their retirement was nothing. A couple $100, $400 or whatever. And you think about the legends back in those days, and they deserve every bit of what we could strike and fight for. And that was a shortened season. I think it was 11 games. And so the battle just keeps going on. Every collective bargaining agreement. And it's gotten a lot better, but slowly advancing to being a lot better. And so I commend you for being part of that fight. All the guys that go through the league, if you get an opportunity like this and hear that perspective from different players, Greg put it so eloquently. It's one of the things you realize the concern in the game is wonderful, but it's also troubling. So
it is. And the one thing that I tell all the young players, learn the history of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because it's great to know the game, but I can tell you a great story. I was at the Super Bowl probably about 5, 6 years ago. The last time Everson Walls was on. Everson's one of my boys, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And this was the first time he had ever been on the ballot, and it shocked me because I'm going, this guy led the league 2 or 3 times in interceptions, 5-time All-Pro, and he's never been up for the ballot. I'm like, well, I've never been up for ballot, but I can understand that, but not Everson.
Yeah.
And we're riding in the elevator, and I get in the elevator, and not to use him as an example, but I am. So I get on there, and I see Dion, and I walk up to Dion, and I go to reach out to say hello to him. And I say, hey, Greg. He says, Greg Bell, you don't have to tell me who you are, man. He said, I'm a student of this game. Mm-hmm. That's how players need to be.
Yeah.
He reached out. He knew me. His first game in the National Football League was against the Los Angeles Rams. I ran for like 226 yards, I think, against the Falcons that day. He knew exactly who I was, and I knew exactly who he was because he took a punt back, But it was like, he's like, I know who you are. You don't have to tell me who you are, man. I know who you are. And I tell guys all the time, all the young kids, because those are the guys that put you into the position where you are today, but you just don't know it.
Yeah.
You just happen to be playing in a game that seems to be for millionaires now. And I remember when it was there for just a couple 100,000. And then PD can remember when it was there just for 10,000.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It changes, and the evolution of the game is just so great. And it's because of the players that came before you that's made it so great for you today. And you just got to learn the history of the game. I tell people, I remember walking up to Too Tall or walking up to L.C. Greenwood or whoever it was, and saying, hey, Mr. Greenwood, I didn't call him L.C. or I didn't call him Jack. They until they said to me, like, people walk up to me and say, hey, Mr. Bell, I go, yeah, I'm just Greg. My dad's Mr. Bell. then they get a chance to call me Greg, and I don't mind that. But it's I keep that same kind of respect. It's just like I remember what they did for the game and how I was so excited to watch them. I wasn't a big autograph seeker, so I never really got into the whole autograph thing. But I just respected what they did for the game that allowed me to walk into the game and be one of the highest paid players at that time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I just like to see it always being passed forward.
Yeah. One of the greatest injustices, and this is a transition to the Rams, and we want to hear about that part, but one of the greatest injustices that Stacey and I talk about all the time is Rosie Greer. There's no reason he should not be in the Hall of Fame. That the NFL ought to just slap itself. That's one they are missing the boat on, and I hope they do that before we lose our dear friend. But that's
Rosie
what all that
Greer,
was.
Rosie and Marshall.
And Marshall, yeah.
Two of the greatest that ever played the positions, and they don't even make sense. And when you think of some of the guys that go into the Hall of Fame, I be scratching my head going, okay, where did I miss this at?
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't get a vote.
Yeah.
I don't get
It's
a vote.
crazy. I love this. There's nothing like chopping it up with veterans about players of the past. For a lot of the fans that listen to this little podcast, a lot of them identify with your generation of players. So when we hear things like there's going to be 2 Thursday night football games now, I'm guessing I know how you two feel. That's insane. That has nothing to do with players. That has to do with advertising dollars and owners. 2 games within 3 days of each other? Come on.
Ridiculous.
It's insane.
Ridiculous.
As I said to you earlier, I think I'm putting my life on the line.
Absolutely.
He's just putting $1.
Yep. That's right. That's right. I love this great commentary that we need to spend more time on in the near future, but we got to ask the obligatory fan stuff, especially for those Los Angeles Rams fans like myself who watch 42 tear it up. Always come by yourself and London Fletcher consistently win the most underrated Ram conversations. Everyone I've ever been in, you two guys. So we got to ask you switch over to the Rams. They had a good offensive line. I mean, you had some studs up front in the mid 80s and late 80s without going through the roster, but you got to play with the Jim Everetts of the world and some of the other great players. And I will forever think that backfield of Bell and Buford McGee should live in history. Absolutely love Buford McGee as well. But as you switch to the Rams and you had those two incredible seasons, you were following guys like Dickerson and Charles White. What was the difference, Greg? How did you recapture after the torn abdomen and other stuff in Buffalo? What made Los Angeles special? The Rams.
Well, first thing that made Los Angeles special was Clarence Shield and Dr. Curley.
Dr. Shield.
You know, when you have a medical team that really knows what they're doing, and you have full 100% unequivocal trust in them, you can feel that makes the first difference, and foremost. And then as a running back, for me, to study with John Robinson, John was a really, really good running back coach. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think when I was younger, if I would have done what I did with the Rams in Buffalo, I probably would have been there my whole career. I think I did a lot of things just off of my young, foolish, stupid self. I didn't have to, I didn't study as much as I should have. I didn't work out as hard. I had a physique. I was this, I was that. If I put the time in like I did with John Robinson, I mean, me and John would come and be at the meeting 6:30 in the morning. And me and him would study the film, just me and him. Nobody else. And unfortunately, we played a lot of one back too, so I was the only person touching the ball, so it really didn't need to be anybody else. But me and John would sit in the film, and we would break down the film ourselves. And so that when you got a guy like that, it just makes a difference. I give John that. He was a really, really good running back position coach, and he was a good head coach as well. And so that makes a difference. And then, you've already given the credit where a lot of credit is due. A running back is really as good as his line. We had an outstanding line with Irv Pankey, Smith, Pankey. Can't believe Jackie Slater. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. You don't find a better lineman than Jackie Slater in the league. And so, you got guys like that are there for you. And then, I saw Buford about a week ago when I was in Houston. Me and Buford still talk probably every other week. So it's one of those things, we were coming out of college together. So we've known each other since, our senior year in college. It's just that kind of a friendship, and we love playing with each other. So when you have that kind of care and love for each other, we had a fun time in Los Angeles, man. And Everett was one of those kind of guys where, regardless what Jim Rome called him or said or did, he had heart. He'd get the ball where it needed to be, and that was a prolific team. I don't care how you look at it. People complain and they lost Eric. Losing the number one running back in the league makes a difference, but it allowed Jim Everett to kind of pull himself, get his bootstraps up. Jim threw for about 4,800 yards. I ran for, my 1,000. Henry Ellert, who should be in the Hall of Fame as well.
Nice. Right.
He shined like no one else. Not even talking about Flipper or Aaron Cox or Ron Brown. We just had a very potent offense at that point in time. And let's be honest, as potent as our offense was, we had a hell of a defense too.
Yeah,
Kevin Green led them from that side of it. We didn't have outside of Kevin being that Hall of Fame player, we had a lot of just steady guys, from Johnny Johnson to Gary Jeter, to Mel Owens to, Jerry Gray. We had a group of guys who believed in themselves, and we played like it. And, I tell people all the time, we had a good chance of of actually winning one. I wish we would have kept that team together a third year. But unfortunately, John Shaw and Georgia and you know, they thought business was unfortunately the business of football gets in the way of just good team thinking, and we broke that team up. They didn't want to pay me like they didn't want to pay Eric. They didn't want to pay Gary Jeter anymore. They let Johnny Johnson retire. Dougie Reed, they let him. I mean, they should have kept that team together. And I'm going to tell you a funny story. 5 years after that, I was retired. I went to a Michigan Notre Dame game, and Bo and John Robinson were really good friends.
Oh. Okay.
And John looked at me and says, we probably were 1 year away, huh?
Yep.
That's what John said. And I looked at him and said, well, you had the chance.
Yep.
That was your decision. Mm-hmm. You could have kept us one more year. And he really should have fought for that. And, unfortunately we didn't. And we all went on our different ways. And, the thing that I think towards the end of your career, the longevity is to continue getting paid for a couple more years, cash a check, put it away, and retire gracefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it becomes.
That 89 Rams team is one of my all-time favorites. And I was waiting for Preston to jump in. That's the second worst decision John Robinson ever made. Preston, you want to comment on the first worst decision John Robinson ever made?
We know what it is. Well, GB doesn't know this, but I remember when I was negotiating, the reason I got to Buffalo is, because we were fighting back and forth. And, John Robinson was our coach. 83 was his first year. Eric Dickerson was a rookie. That was my last year with the Rams. And then Robinson.
He planned to run the ball.
He planned to run the ball, but he also wanted speed with the receiver position. Well, I was your average guy. But when it's all said and done, we negotiated the contract. And at the end of it, they shipped me off to Buffalo. But before I left, I said, John, you ever thought that I could come off the bench and be your third and long, your nickel guy, and just keep the drive going? And he thought about that, and he did not comment. And I went on to Buffalo. Had my best year.
Yeah. So we did him a favor.
But, and I tell people all the time, John, towards the end, I think he became more of I hate to say it this way, but I think he became more of a management coach and less of a player's coach.
Yeah.
And that happens to a lot of players. I mean, a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
They get paid. John was the highest paid coach in the league my last year in the league with the Rams. He was making more than most of the players. And it's hard to be a player's coach when your players are sitting there looking at you going, hey, wait a minute, man. I'm the one, like Eric said, I'm running 47 gap.
I'm running that 47 gap, yes.
I'm running 47 gap. And so, it gets to that position, man. It gets hard, when guys are at that position. And, I never said that. I mean, I got to the point where I just, he said he was going to do some things. He didn't do them. And I just said, I gotta move on. And I really love my time with the Rams. I spend a lot of time with my Ram guys. I talk to Ron Brown probably 2-3 times a week. We still stay in touch. We do some projects together here. Ron was my guy when I was here. We always been close. We met when we were in college because of track and field. And we've always kind of kept that we boys, we talk all the time. And so, it's just, we had a lot of great guys, Leroy, Irvin. We just had some characters, man. And we have a lot of fun. When we see each other now, we still have fun,
Yeah.
It's like nothing ever changed, and we all have to go our separate ways, but we still come back home.
Right.
Love that. So just two quick ones in conclusion as we try to wrap this thing up, as we always do. Then you move on to the Raiders. And you're hanging out in a running back room that features Marcus Allen, Bo Jackson, and Napoleon McCallum, and Greg Bell. Like, is that an embarrassment of riches at running? Like, what was Al Davis?
It really is. It was too much riches for one man. But that was Al Davis. That was Coach Davis was I'll tell you one thing. Of all the owners, I like him better than all of them because he loved the game. His passion for the game of football is unmatched. And he knew more about the game than people will ever give him credit for. Because I'm going to tell you what, he watched more film than I ever did. And I know he came in, he'd be at that gym, he'd be at the facility at 5 o'clock in the morning watching film. And he would call me up and say, hey, on that 37 Bob, you should try and dip it a little bit before you. He would tell you what and what he gave you advice on sometimes worked. So I'm just telling people have they talk about different owners. He was a special owner. He really was. And I understand why so many guys really cared for him. His son is the same way. You can say what you want to say about the Raider organization, but I will say this, of all the organizations that I was associated with, they care more about me today than probably all the other organizations.
Really?
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, they do.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, players, they say once you're silver and black, you're forever locked in. Okay, Greg, real quick for the fans, because this is fan service at times. Toughest player you ever faced? Toughest hitter, toughest anything you ever met?
I will say this. The toughest player I ever played with, not necessarily the toughest, but I will say I think he was probably one of the smartest, and that would be Tommy Jackson, linebacker for the Denver Broncos.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Like that. And
Tommy was a hard guy. Because he wasn't a super big guy, he could run with you, he could maneuver with you, but he was smart enough to know the game. Tommy's one of those in-between guys. He could be in the Hall of Fame, he couldn't be, but, Tommy had a 12, 13-year career with one team because he was smart. He was smart.
Yeah.
Wow. Super cool. Heck of a guy on TV, too. Yeah. Really smart on television. Yeah. Okay. We never have enough time, and shame on us really quick, Greg, but we really are interested in what players are doing today. And as you dig around in your history, you alluded to it earlier about your mentoring people. And Athletes for Life Foundation, which you founded in '89. By the way, Stacy Turan, for obvious reasons, I watched his career very closely. The only other guy named Stacy that I knew as a kid in high school trying to say, this is not a girl's name. Stacy Turan was a guy I watched, and I know we lost him in a tragic accident. But you've been inspired by that. What are you doing today? You mentioned some of the projects.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was inspired because I was Nancy Reagan's spokesperson for California, as well as Governor Cuomo's in New York State for Athletes Against Drunk Driving and Drug Prevention. So I was speaking on on drunk driving and anti-drunk driving, and then of course I lose one of my best friends to it. We started anti-drunk driving prevention back in '89, and since then we've become an educational provider. Now I serve in San Bernardino County. In the city of San Bernardino, I should say, the schools there. We work with over almost 70 schools with after-school education programs, mentoring. I tell people I think I've probably got the largest life skill camp. We've been doing this camp now 23 years. It started out as an HSPD and JPD program with the NFL, and now we service almost 400 kids for free. Come on the campus of Cal State San Bernardino for 4 days, 3 nights, and they get life skills. They get a goodie bag that's full with shirts, hats, everything. NFL players from the Vikings now, from the Packers, guys that have come through the program, they give them lifetime lessons on and off the field. We do mental health. We do social justice. We talk about now, of course, the NIL is still in NC2A clearing. And we just do a lot of things. We have a recidivism program with the state now. We have state grants. We have a few of those grants that we're working with the state of California to help some of the kids that are coming out of the system stay out of the system and help them get, gainfully employed in California now. So we do a lot of things with Athletes for Life that I could be on this phone with you for another hour going through all the little things. But the biggest part of it is we just trying to help these kids achieve their dreams. And if they haven't gotten a dream yet, we try and put them to sleep and let them get a dream,
Love it.
So that tomorrow starts out a little bit better than it was today.
So awesome. We do need another hour on that, so we will make you get in your car and join us again because, listen, from this side of the microphone, we live in a world that's crazy at times, without going into depth, but both of you guys were guys I was fans of, and I know what Preston does and how many hours he gives that nobody knows about, and the same with you, Greg. Thanks for doing that back to the kids because we need all the help. We need it. We got to have it for the young people.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That's my way of giving back that I've enjoyed most. Like I tell people, I've never worked a day in my life. God has been blessing me ever since the day I told my mom, I said, I'm going to be a pro athlete. And that's, man, I think about it, that's been about 44 years ago. So it's been a long blessing, man. And I pinch myself every day, and I thank him every day just for, here we're going into Palm Sunday and all the rest. God's been a blessing for me.
Amen,
big week. Well, Preston, I want to give you the honors if you want them. And Greg, we do the 2-minute drill. It's just designed to give the fans listening in an opportunity to learn a little bit about Greg Bell outside of him running people over. So here we go, Preston Denard.
All right, well, before we get started, GB, I just want to personally say, if you can use me in the efforts and what you're doing with your program, you just give me a call. Let me know how I can support you.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, 2-minute drill. You know what this is. Quick whip, the first thing that comes to mind. And here we go. Turf or grass?
Grass.
Love it, old school. Raiders or Rams?
Rams.
Ooh, okay. Your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? John Q.
John Q. Oh, I love that movie too. Love it. Okay, so you mentioned Tom Jackson, but your most underrated teammate at any level, actually.
Most underrated teammate. You're gonna love this one. Most underrated teammate, Donnie Royal. Because if you came across that middle, Donnie gonna knock you out.
Yes. Okay. Wow. There you go. You are so right.
And I watched him knock some guys out.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was a hard.
Woo!
Okay. Woo, boy.
Royal.
It reminds me of a couple other guys. Okay, your greatest football achievement.
Greatest football achievement. I mean, to me, if I'm going to say my greatest football achievement, being drafted number 1.
I love it. Yes, sir. And that's a joy, playing with a number 1. Well, I guess ED was number 1. There's a few of my players. Somebody was always number 1, every year.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, last one. Who plays Mr. Greg Bell in the movie about you and your life?
Oh, who plays Greg Bell?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it would have been a couple years ago, of course I would have picked Denzel. But now I'm gonna pick the young. Hey, look! But now I'm gonna pick the young boy who just finished doing Creed.
Oh yeah. Well, that's
Michael
a good
B.
thing.
Jordan.
Michael
B. Jordan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's a good choice. It's that or Idris Elba. It's like, oh my God.
That hadn't been called on yet, so that's a good one. Well,
Love
GB, this is just wonderful. Stacy and I are so excited. We were really looking forward to this interview. Love you. I'm just glad that I can claim I played with you at least 1 year, and your rookie year, what a great year it was. And to be the ambassador you are with young people in the community in California, Southern California, Los Angeles, I just commend you for the work that you're doing. So thank you for joining us.
I
Thank
echo
you guys,
that.
and I appreciate the invite. Look forward to seeing you in about a month or so.
Yeah, about a month. Yeah, a little bit over a month, a week. But the golf tournament, we're going to swing it a little bit out here. Got some great golf courses out here. Yeah.
All right.
Albuquerque,
Well,
New Mexico.
it.
Okay. Fantastic. Go out and support these guys and all that they're doing. Thanks again to the iconic number 42, Greg Bell, Rams fans. What a joy this has been to climb back into the past with one of our top running backs in history. Thanks again, Mr. Bell. And for myself and Preston Denard, thanks again for listening to Gridiron Icon. Follow us on YouTube, all the major podcast hosts. And until then, be well. We will see you next week.